So I got this question from a friend of mine called Gareth, and he basically he's a songwriter, he's a producer, he's a composer, done really well. Now the problem he's got is writer's block, and he's asked me, how do I get out of writer's block? I said to him, one thing I said to him straight away was, you know, are you putting way too much pressure on you? Is there a lot of pressure for every song to be a hit? And he was like, well, yeah, kind of. I mean, it's my livelihood, it's my living, it's how I'm making my money. So every song has to be good. I said, well, there's your problem. Is I know firsthand, because when I used to write, I used to love writing music, and then the rules started coming into play, and I had things like, I knew I could earn X amount mixing, mastering, and then to spend the same amount of time producing, it was like, I've got to make a hit, because I could just be spending that time doing mixing and mastering, and I know I'm guaranteed to make success in that, whereas the music, it's not always guaranteed. So to combat writer's block, don't get into thinking it's all about the money. It still ultimately should be about the love, and as soon as it all becomes about the money, you do get writer's block, because you concentrate on making hit after hit after hit, and that's not how it works, and we all know that. If you're a producer watching this, you will know that you'll write 5 songs, for instance, and one will be a great song, whereas the other 4 are kind of, they're fillers. It's very rare to produce hit after hit after hit, and that was his issue, was that he'd start writing, and then it wouldn't be that hit, and he wouldn't get to that point where he's got that hit. But then it could turn into a hit, but it's not every single song is a hit. So you are going to fall into this trap of writer's block. Now, to get out of it, I mean, the best way to get out of it is to kind of try and get out that mentality of, I have to make real good music, I have to make it every single time, because you aren't going to make great music every time. You aren't going to make your best songs one after the other. You'll write 10 songs for an album. 5 of them will actually make it onto the album. You'll have to write 20 songs to then make an album of 10, unless you want songs that are going to be fillers. You aren't going to make 10 hits one after the other. And the problem you've technically got is that you put too much pressure on yourself, and quite rightfully so. And we all want to do the best we possibly can. But when it's something creative, it can't be forced. It really can't be forced. As soon as you start forcing it, you start to get writer's block. Any other ways to get out of it? Just break the rules. Just stop thinking of the rules, and the rules and the money and everything like that, and all these kind of these things that box you in. That's what causes you to get writer's block. The other thing that you can try, and it does work. I mean, sometimes we've got a lovely mastering chain, and sometimes you can just be working with the same equipment every single day. Get something new. Something new comes into play, and it inspires you to work a little bit different and change a couple of things. Buy a new synthesizer, get a new synth plug-in, things like that. Buy a new VST. All these little things, they do contribute to getting you out of that slump. Also, as well, is it's not just about the kind of the music. It's also about you and how you feel as a person outside of the music. Imagine if you had your studio on a beach in Thailand, and it's like, fed up with producing, I'm going to go sit on the beach for half hour. Imagine what you're going to come back to and produce. You're going to produce some great music, because your headspace is totally different. I mean, we all work in London, You work in London, Gareth, who asked the question. You know, we all work in London. It's a stressful place to live. It's not the nicest of places to live. It's a very grey place to live and work. But you know that all these things can affect you. You know, imagine if you was out in the countryside, things like that, writing your music. You know, go to a writers' camp. You know, writers' camps are generally, you know, somewhere lovely. Places out away from everything else, and that's why, because it frees you to be better at what you're doing, because you don't have all those stresses. You know, bear in mind all these little things that are going on around you as a person. You know, we've just had lockdown. We've come out of that. You know, there's all sorts of issues that especially creative people, because they kind of been confined. All these things can contribute. So, you know, the main things that I will highlight in this question is kind of try not to think every single time needs to be a hit, because all right, ideal world, yeah, wicked, it would be every time, but it doesn't have to be, and it won't be. And as soon as you get out of that kind of mentality that every time has to be a hit, you'll produce better music, because you won't have that kind of weight on your shoulders to make sure that everything works. Secondly, kind of look at yourself, look at how you feel as a person. You know, get out of, you might have just a slump in life in general. Get out of that. Try and kind of better yourself in the way of you know, I know you know, go out into your garden. You know, just sit there, have a cup of tea, chill out. Don't just sit just looking at the same screen for 8 hours a day, trying to just hammer out this kind of chord progression that's going to blow everyone away. You know, have a go at it. Walk away. Go have a cup of tea. It doesn't matter if you're having a cup of tea. Now, I know exactly what you're going to think when you think, right, well, I'm going to leave the studio. I've got 8 hours. Let's say I've got 8 hours to do something, and I'm going to leave the studio for 30 minutes. But if I leave the studio for 30 minutes, I'm eating into that 8 hours that I've got. So what? That half an hour of you just walking away from that chord progression, for instance, you walk away from that half an hour is more beneficial than you sitting there just going, oh, not being able to get it. You go away, right? You have a cup of tea, reflect on life, just sit in the garden. You know, I know you've got a nice garden, so just sit in your nice garden, sit there, chill out, have a cup of tea, and then come back to it half hour later, and you'll be more productive, because you've had that half hour break to kind of free your mind and get yourself into a nice headspace to finish that chord progression. So, you know, they're my little ways of getting out of writer's block, and this is transferable to anyone who's a producer. You know, it doesn't matter if you're a big producer or someone who's just coming home from work every day. I mean, think of it. You're coming home from work, jumping straight into a studio, trying to write music. You might not have had the best day at work. You know, you're not in the right frame of mind to write music. It might be a case of, you know, coming from work, sit down, get into the right headspace